I am Captain Logan, and this is day 252 of Spawn Year. I can't decide if I am becoming more like Spawn, or if Spawn is becoming more like me. Ever since I regained my memories and then read that note from Dan Torrey, which may confirm this is all more than an elaborate fantasy cooked up in my own psyche in a coma, I have endeavored to make up for my past mistakes and take responsibility for my actions, especially with regards to Doomsvince. Spawn is trying to do the very same thing, except my fault in what Doomsvince has become is clear, while Spawn's obligation to Twitch in rescuing his son is quite vague. I wish Hogwind hadn't felt the need to contrive this as a personal repentance for Spawn. It would seem a great deal more heroic if he simply said, I used to selfishly use people for my own ends, I feel bad for all the suffering I caused. The closest I can get to making up for it is selflessly using my powers to save and help anybody who needs it. A couple issues ago, Spawn too begrudgingly agrees to help Twitch find Max. I owe you that much, he says. I think Hogwind is trying too hard to gradually get Spawn to a more giving and heroic attitude. Like it's more realistic if he's still kind of a jerk. I've had to read so much entitled, melodramatic, inconsiderate Spawn that now, after he's had this huge epiphany and is totally repelled by the kind of man he once was, I think I can swallow an Ebenezer Scrooge-level transformation. Why can't Spawn just help Twitch out of the kindness of his heart, because he likes and respects him, because he's his friend, and wants to see him whole again? Spawn doesn't need to have some personal guilt driving him in every situation, and it's not like he doesn't have a self-serving motivation for random acts of kindness. Like Angel in the Buffy Angel series, he's on a road to redemption. The name of the game is doing good, not just cleaning up your own messes. Being a good person at the core, so you don't continue to cause misery after you've gone through the motions of righting your own wrongs. This is another really simple, uninspired ending to a more interesting setup, though nowhere near as disappointing as the conclusion to the ghosty samurai arc with that bridge dream I wrote a dissertation on, only to find it didn't amount to much of anything. An intriguing story that started with a house of ghosts and a 7-year-old spirit who wants to kill people just to create new playmates, ultimately forgets all about the ghosts and just uses the little girl as a device for easy and predictable drama, and it degenerates into a drawn-out fight between Spawn and an unsightly beast that looks like a cross between Cygor, a giant spider, and a werewolf. And he's got a couple violator arms. Wiggy. There was a panel toward the end of last issue showing a cellar door someone was pounding on the other side of, so at least there was some forethought, and this monstrosity didn't come out of nowhere. Apparently this whacked out freak of nature makes the rules about souls not being allowed to leave the house because he somehow feeds on them. Huh, this whole issue reminds me of an Angel episode. Remember the one with the fear-eating demon that lived in the hotel? This comic post-dates that by at least a year. This came out in 2003, so there's a fair chance Hogwind ripped that off for this. But this story is totally ambiguous as to what the monster is really feeding on. It has the ability to sense Spawn's failures, but I'm not sure if that's because Spawn's tendency to turn everything he touches into ash is the thing he's most afraid of, or if he feeds on failure as opposed to fear. He calls Spawn's fears a banquet, but he also refers to himself as fear and anguish. Either way, there is a nice poetic notion of Spawn killing that which represents everything he used to represent. Considering Owl used to figuratively feed on the despair he created in others, and considering these unfortunate ghosts all lost their lives in unjust ways and seem more sad than scared, it would make the most thematic sense if despair were what the monster fed on. Meanwhile, a parallel is drawn between Max and Spawn. As Spawn brawls with the beast, Max delivers a tedious amount of narration. blaming himself for his father getting shot, and he says what Spawn said about himself that the monster echoes: everything he touches dies. He also rambles on about all the horrible things that happen in the world in a very teen angsty sort of way. He complains about bullies and murderers, and says that while he understands why his dad always said life isn't fair, he says life isn't even close to fair. He even brings up terrorism and fear of an economic collapse. Just wait a few years, kid, and that fear will become a lot more real. Idea-wise, this issue is all over the place. What should be a story about Spawn and his newfound selflessness helping Max and Twitch find it within themselves to look past their guilt and anger and do the right thing too, goes on and on about the same tired religious commentary. Max, like Twitch, doesn't believe in God because he can't understand why God lets all these horrible things happen. I have to read yet another character trying to reason out something I already know. If Max spent 5 minutes chatting with Spawn, he'd learn God is real but is only interested in winning souls to fight hell with. So at the end, when Spawn beats Vio, Cygor, Spider, Wolfalator, and miraculously heals Twitch, and Max decides God must work in mysterious ways, calling back to the conversation Twitch had with Sam where he declared he couldn't worship a god who would send his son to die, it's hard to read this as the happy ending it's made out as. Max isn't the same as Al used to be. Al was a detestable human being. Max was gullible and naive, and with this ending, he's still that way. He makes no choice that improves the situation or demonstrates he's learned anything. Next time a pretty girl tries to put him in a precarious situation, I bet he falls for it all over again. And had Spawn been unable to heal Twitch, this would have been a good payoff for his strict philosophy that parents should always sacrifice themselves for their children. He offers Max his life to replenish his own, so Max could have lived while Twitch went out in a blaze of glory. And that seemed like the natural place to go, especially since it's set up that way pages before Spawn magics the conflict away. I wouldn't want Twitch to die necessarily, but that's twice now the groundwork is laid for an epic sacrifice and it hasn't paid off. After this, frankly, I'm not sure what's left to say with Twitch's character. I guess it's time to go dramatically traumatize Sam and milk him for all he's worth. And what's the deal with that cliffhanger before, where Al was injured from a gunshot wound? How does he practically raise the dead if he can't heal himself? As usual, Spawn's is weak or as powerful as the story needs him to be. And even worse, it cheapens his newfound humanity by making him as powerful as he ever was before. Either give him real internal conflicts and make him consistently all-powerful, or else make him mortal enough I can be afraid for his life and appreciate him putting himself on the line for others. Max is apparently whole again and not a half-ghost, and we aren't told why. Maybe Max took Twitch's life force before Spawn healed him, but concrete, explicit facts remain this book's #1 adversary. That and covers that have nothing to do with what's inside. This one's worse than generic. It's a cover that goes with the first Forsberg story. That's what Spawn was wearing way back when he was working with Terry in the Middle East. Now I'm just waiting for a Win or Clown or Cygor cover on an issue they're not even in. Signed, Captain Logan.